Best and Young, Lone Roamer. Today, we're going to do some bearing work on Industry 9 Hydra hub. All right, so I need to change bearings. I believe just the inner bearings. I have a complete bearing pack to do every bearing in the hub, but for now, I'm just going to focus on the inner bearings. The whole process is pretty easy. I've already got it taken apart to this place. You just pull your end caps off, and then you're just going to pull this your driver body off. Okay, all that needs clean. So the axle, you could put a wooden block in front of, impact hammer with a nice rubber face will be fine. You're going to take and you're going to tap this. There's a flange on the other side up against the bearing that this axle sits up against inside of there. So I'm going to tap that out real quick. It shouldn't be too hard. Okay, so what'll happen is, as you can see, once that bearing's loose, is that axle, right? It's greasy, right? But that's how that axle sits up against that. So you tap it out that direction. You can see both of them are flanged, right? But this way is easier to tap it out because it's the long side that sticks out. So drive that out. That's the bearing. Oh yeah, that bearing's nice and rough. Then take a 3/4 is what I use socket, fits nicely in there, and then just tap the bearing out from the other side. Okay. Yep. And that'll tap that bearing out. It's not very hard, pretty easy to get out. Oh, that bearing's pretty much toast as well. So remember which bearings go in, and then line up with your new bearings. Make sure everything is available. Clean some of this grease off here. So as you can see, like I said, I have a complete bearing kit for this, for every possible piece, because in here you've got bearings, but this thing is spinning perfect, so we are not going to mess with those bearings. We are simply going to clean this out and replace the 2 bearings that go inside of that hub shell. I've got some suspension clean that I use. It works really good, but just rubbing alcohol, cleaning solution. So whatever you do, make sure it's not going to be on there, and make sure it's not doing any damage. So I have a beautifully clean hub shell. Look at that. The ring gear is nice and clean. Everything through is shiny. So great place to start. Okay, so you have choices here. Dumont Tech makes great products. You can use free hub grease, or you can use Pro-X free hub oil. Now, free hub oil, easier to clean up, tends to, you know, clean it up, reuse it, pop the driver body off, put it on quite often. Here's the big difference. This, you'll get that loud, buzzy hub. This will actually bring the hub down to very, very quiet. And so you can tell as your hub gets louder when you need to clean it and grease it. This way, it does get louder as this also needs done, but it's not as obvious. So some of the nice thing about this is as it starts to get that buzz sound, you're like, oh, time to clean and re-grease my hub. Especially the driver body pulse, which is primarily what that's for. So look inside of our bearing kit here. Now these 2 bearings have different inner diameters because the hub shell, I don't know if you can see it, and this is thicker on the one end. The long thin end is your driver body end. This thing is pretty nasty. It's got lots of use. Gets the tar bead out of it attached to an e-bike. So we'll get this thing all cleaned up here real quick. All right, now that that's clean, we've got our bearings picked. Let's remember the gray side of the bearing faces outboard. There's a black side and a gray side. Gray side of the bearing faces outboard. These are 6903. So if you have a 6903 bearing installation removal system, it's easier than like a vise or trying to manipulate it that way. So it's a tool like this. I have a couple of different tools. This one works really well. This is clean and ready to go. And we will get to putting this together. Also, use marine grease. Marine grease will create a water barrier all on its own. So it's really good to always use marine grease for stuff like this. Let's get started on putting it back together. So I'm going to grease these two pieces. Make sure, right, pay attention. Don't press one of these into the wrong end. Have to undo the whole thing. So the shorter end with the larger bearing ID, inner diameter, the gray side out, goes on the brake side. I'm center lock, so this will go in first, and then we'll put the axle in, okay? Take a little marine grease, lube that layer, like that. Easy enough. Again, verify which bearing. Many times if I have to. We get that placed and started. So it should just sort of sit flush like that. Unthread the end off. Then I'll just adjust the thread length. We're going to take this, we're going to slide it on. Take the other side of the press, line this up. You want to center that over your bearing now. See how that's pretty nice and centered? Pretty simple stuff. And you just drive it in. It won't be overly difficult. Never is. Make sure it's snug, make sure it's seated. You'll know because it won't turn it all like that. Simply back that off. One piece slides out. Gray side is out. Bearing is pressed in. Okay. Axle. Lube your axle pretty good. Yeah, I get enough grease on mine because it's staying in there. Right, no reason for it to not have enough. Okay. We take our axle, we slide it in. Now that's nicely in place. This is where all of this gets quite a bit trickier, because now you have to get all this over the top. Depending, I didn't get out my big kit. I have a great big kit with all these spacers, but if you have the right spacer, if I get out this big kit, see, you can get into all kinds of sizes of bearings. So if you're going to start doing this, these are good to own. All right, so now we're going to take this one. We're going to make sure, put a little grease on this bearing. I did it on the inside of the hub shell before. Slide this over. So we're going to gray side out. See how that fit nicely? I'm going to slide that in place. Right up against that edge, okay? All right, now we're going to use just this one because it slides on that axle the same, see that? But we have to have something to press against that with. That's not long enough. So you go through your spacers that you have, That one's too narrow in the center. That one's too narrow in the center. So if we slide that one on, and that one on, lo and behold, now I need to adjust this spacer to be long enough. So you'll just take this and make this threading longer. Not quite long enough. There we go, plenty now. Make sure all that's still where I want it. I also need a small one on the other side. On this one, you gotta have a spacer on that side. Otherwise, what you do is you end up butting right up against the axle, and you can't slide a bearing across an axle if you're pushing against the axle itself. Okay, again, these should push pretty easy, so you don't need to side load anything too crazy. Like that. All right, so I've got one spacer on this side, sticking out past the axle, my bearing press and two spacers over the axle. That made it easy. That axle is pressed back into place with brand new bearings. So you can see on this side, I use this up and over, done. There it is. Grease is holding that on. Ring grease is some great stuff. There we go. All right, now we've got an axle that's in there correctly and spins perfectly smooth. Clean the driver body, reinstall it, throw the brake rotor back on, go ride your bike. And here's this thing, pretty simple, just clean it. I like free hub grease because I like quiet hubs, and that's it. That's the process. So I'll get into cleaning and servicing all of this at some point in a different video. Make sure these pawls stay down. That one was actually trying to sneak up. There are springs behind those pawls, and you don't want to go looking for those on your garage floor. That's why mine is painted tan, so I can find all the things I do drop. So as you can see, that thing spins so good I don't need to work on it at all. And we're gonna go ahead and clean this up, put it back together, and put it on the bike. I'll be doing the front wheel in a different video as well, and just getting all my bearings freshened up except in this. I'm gonna service this later because you've got to take all this apart and it's more intricate, and I wanna set up cameras on the desk better for that. So if you like this, please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing more service stuff. Plus I got some great bike reviews coming up. Turbo Levo, the brand new Turbo Levo. Well, it's been out for a few months now. Norcosite VLT, Giant Rainy Plus. So I got some great e-bikes. I got a spur review I'm going to do, and a few other pretty cool bikes. A couple of brand new pivots that are just out, including a Shadow Cat. So I got to get caught up on videos, and I'll get some really great stuff out. So hit that bell to be notified when the videos come out. I look forward to seeing you out on the trails.